of the Glenville Town Board please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, may we be at peace. May our hearts remain open. May we always be aware of our true nature. May we be healed. May we be the source of healing for others. And may we always dwell in your house. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll.
Councilman Pipilani.
Here.
Councilman Yarborough.
Here.
Councilman Yaluski.
Here.
Councilwoman Rosbowski. Here. Supervisor Kensley.
Here. Again, welcome all. The agendas are up front. There is one addition to the agenda as soon as I find mine. We will be having an executive session this evening to discuss contract negotiation with an outside vendor. It's not a labor matter. And that will go on after add-on resolution number 1. And so we don't anticipate coming back out and conducting public business after that. You're free to stay, but we don't anticipate any business being conducted after that executive session. So with that, I'll start with town council reports. On my left, Councilman Galuski.
Just a reminder that Love My Parks Day is this Saturday. It's from 11 to 2. There will be cleanups or different activities going on to help benefit the parks over at Anderson Dog Park, Indian Meadows, and Mount. And if you're interested, you can contact Vicki Hillis to help volunteer. Also, just wanted to extend my sympathies and condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of former City of Schenectady Mayor Frank Ducey, who passed away recently. I read a number of articles about the former mayor. I reached out to some family members today to see if anyone had a particular story about the former mayor. I heard the same dialogue over and over again. Genuineness, true public servant. There was not an event he wasn't at. There wasn't a cause he wouldn't donate to. I remember being a young, this probably won't surprise any of my colleagues, but being 13 and going to a mayoral debate in the City of Schenectady at the time in 1995, 96, and tagging along with my dad, and seeing and meeting the mayor, and I still remember meeting him, the impression that he made on me. I still remember a comment he made during the debate that really drew everyone's attention into the debate and really kind of set the scene. It was about the genuineness of one of the candidates at the time. And I think, kind of looking back, I think he really brought genuineness into the political dialogue, and something you should be remembered for, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rosbowski.
Yes, I have a couple of things, Mr. Supervisor. In conjunction with May 4th, the Love Your Parks Day, I will be leading the charge at the Anderson Dog Park. So if you would like to come over there and help us clean up within the fenced areas, clean up some doggy toys that may have gotten chewed up over the time that it's been open. We're going to be planting some flowers, doing general cleanup and spruce up the park. Please feel free to join us there. I do believe I have a good troop of Girl Scouts who are all signed up and ready to go. I went to the town chiefs meeting last Thursday evening at East Glenville Fire Department, and we did have some conversation with regard to the fire training center. They were going to work on a two-pronged approach where they are trying to figure out a vehicle for them to receive grant monies when the town receives them from the state. And they're also tightening up what they think they would like to see at the site, keeping in mind, the budgetary limitations that we do have. So I'm hoping that within the next couple of months we'll have something back from them that we can move forward with. So
Thank you. Councilman Pipilani.
Yes. The 17th National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day occurred last Saturday, the 27th. Glenville Police have been completing this detail since its inception. It was another great success. Our police department collected 8 large boxes and a half garbage bag of prescription meds. In addition to that, in addition to the prescription drugs, they collected another box of meals. This event always tends to be very well supported and appreciated by the residents. I believe a conservative estimate would be about 130 residents using this service during the last 4 hours. And next event will take place in September.
Thank you. Councilman Aragosa.
A couple things. I attended the doing business with Glenville event at Clink this past couple of weeks, and it was really well attended. Supervisor Ketzley gave a nice talk about what's going on in town, along with Greg Gillen, talking about some of the good things that they've been doing for the town of Glenville. That same evening, I was fortunate to get over to the Outlaws Association meeting and learn some more about their neighborhood and some of the good things that they're doing over there. And I appreciate the opportunity to go there.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Frank Ducci, because I'm a north side of Schenectady, born and raised. Frank, I learned a lot about politics as an 18-year-old. My father said to me, you know, they're looking for a committeeman for the Republican Party over there, and you should go out and be one. And that wasn't an option. That was being told. And one thing about the north side of Schenectady, if you weren't a Republican at that time, you didn't do anything. You got nothing, you did nothing in the city. But Frank was an interesting character. Going to those meetings was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about politics and how those things work. I'd like to say Frank was a good friend of ours. My family owns a business in the north side of Schenectady for 45 years. We were across the street from Frank where he lived, and he's just really a great guy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 5. It's a public hearing. It's a public hearing to hear all those persons interested in the application by Highridge Development for the zoning change for the easterly portion of the parcel known as 21 Airport Road, which will be changed from airport zoning to research, development, and technology to match the zoning currently in place on the westerly portion of the same lot. I'll open that public hearing now. Anyone wish to be heard? Public hearing is open on the matter for the zone change at 21 Airport Road from airport zoning to research, development, and technology. Going once, going twice, seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. We now move to privilege of the floor. Anyone interested in addressing the board will open privilege of the floor, which is now open. Anyone interested in being heard at privilege of the floor? There is nobody signed up. Going once, going twice, seeing none, privilege of the floor is now closed. So we do have a couple presentations tonight. The first presentation is item number 7, the Freeman's Bridge Road Overlay District by Chairman Jim Martin. Jim is the chair of the let me get you set up there, Jim. Is the chair of the Codes Review Committee. I've been working with the committee along with Councilman Galuski as liaison, and Jim's going to be presenting to the board. It's not a misnomer to say overlay district. This is an actual zoning.
Well, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So, Jim, I think I warmed you up enough.
Okay.
It's all you.
Okay, thanks. As the board is obviously aware, there was a zoning revision committee appointed. You appointed it, and the effort's been underway for almost 2 years now, and we've been meeting on a regular basis. And it is, and what I like to do with these types of things is I like to just explain the who, what, whys, and wherefores, and all that. So. For the benefit of the public, who's doing this? It's a committee of people there that is on the left side of the screen. Myself as chairperson, Mike Burns, who's a planner with the town, Jim Pangburn, our code enforcement officer, Arnie Briscoe is also our code enforcement officer and building inspector, Dave Hennell, Mike Carr, residents of the community, and I'll explain their involvement in a little bit. Chris mentioned his involvement. He's been at most of the meetings. Mike Godlewski, who's the liaison from the town board, he's been at virtually every one of the meetings. And then a person that we couldn't function without is Lynn Malkuski. She's the clerk from the planning office, and she's a tremendous help. And along the way, we've been getting some targeted technical assistance from a planning consultant, Planning for Spaces. They've done a lot of work in the corridor, so they were a logical choice.
just to explain the involvement of a couple of these people, Mike Carr is chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Dave Hennell is chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So they obviously have a great relevance to this committee. It's a lot of people who work in the code. The staff does every day is obviously enforcement people, and these residents from the community work in it virtually every month during the regular meetings of their respective boards. The other people I want to mention, it's kind of a special instance here. Kevin Corcoran, who was also a planner for the town for many years, and Terry Patrica, she was an enforcement officer for the town for many years. They both retired in the midst of this effort. And they had a lot of involvement in the first few months here, and they were a tremendous resource, and I want to extend thanks on behalf of the committee members for the contributions they made. They were very dedicated in this effort, and a lot of this stuff that you'll see is a result of their input. So what is this? It's generally a revision process. I'll get into some more specifics in a moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to update the entire zoning chapter of the town code. That's and the code initiated in zoning initiated in the town by what I can glean out of the document. Basically, in 1966, that was the first iteration of zoning. That's pretty typical what you see in upstate communities. That's when zoning came into be. And then over the course of time, a code may go through some targeted revisions, as this one has and continues to do. But the last major effort appears to be in about 2005 or 6, where they probably went through the entire chapter. And there's been some what I refer to as piecemeal updates ever since. So the charge of this committee is to update that chapter of the code. Okay, so why is this being undertaken? Well, as I just mentioned, it's been quite a while since it's been looked at. 13 years is quite some time. As time passes here, working in zoning as I do, virtually on a day-to-day basis, technology is having an effect on regulations. It's a fast-moving situation now. I'll date myself a little bit here and say I can remember when codes didn't know how to deal with video rental stores. I remember being at a planning board meeting and what the heck is this? How are we going to regulate this? What kind of traffic and blah, blah, blah. It's gone. Blockbuster had 3,800 stores or whatever. They have one. So that's come and gone. And now the same thing is happening with solar technology, what have you, charging stations for electric cars, all this stuff. So land use is ever evolving with technology as technology advances, and the cycles are shorter and shorter and shorter. And it's a struggle for local communities because regulations take a long time to formulate and they take a long time to revise, especially something that deals with zoning, because zoning, in my opinion, it's the second most way that we interact with our residents is through the zoning code. The first is highway services, probably, as Tom Pola can tell us, but zoning is a close second. And here we're dealing with matters that relate to people's real property. Their most expensive investment they're likely going to make in their lives. It's very near and dear to them. It's home. And so, how this goes is very important. So, getting into some more items why this is being done, the use schedules, therefore, need to be updated. The regulations in zoning occur through what is referred to as use schedules by district, and we have to keep pace with the changes in technology. But the other thing that influences that also is, and it's the first and foremost, is what the community wants to see for their zoning ordinance. What do neighbors enjoy in their neighborhood? What do they want to see in their commercial districts? What do they want to derive from their industrial zoning, or where they might go to work every day? So these are important things that are regulated, and it's important that this code be in lockstep with the latest thinking, the latest sentiment of the town. And then as another technical matter, the terminology can get out of date. We got to make sure that in keeping with those technological changes, we have word usage and definitions that keep pace with that. So we're going to take a long look at these definitions, because I can tell you, as an administrator of a few codes across the region, if you have a poorly defined code, in other words, your terminology is poorly defined, you're going to have weak and ineffective enforcement. It's not a comment on the staff, it's a fact. It will happen. So we want to make sure our terminology is up to date and nice and tight. And then we want to try and minimize the confusion. Every iteration of a zoning code, it gets better and better. And for example, in the town here, the town sign regulation is somewhat confusing. It's located in several different parts of the code, several different districts, and it's kind of confusing and a little bit all over the place. For example, is one thing we want to bring to the table here is to consider bringing the sign regulations into one section of the code, so it's a place to refer to once for the public as well as the staff that has to administer. And ultimately, what we're looking for is better service to the residents. All about it. So that's fundamental. That's underlying the whole effort. How is this being done? Well, this is Glenville, and we do things cost effectively. It's all volunteer. Staff is involved. They're coming at night in addition to their full-time, day job here at the town. They're coming to these meetings once a month for a couple hours a month, and they're providing their input. Again, it's very invaluable, and I give Arnie and Jim and Terry and Kevin Pryor and now Mike, I give them a lot of credit for coming in and taking that extra time. It shows real dedication. And the residents, the residents are coming. We're involved. We are the people, and we're trying to help out. And from the standpoint of planning and zoning commission members and ZBA, it's just that much better. We meet on a monthly basis, and I'm telling you, there's oftentimes you'll have a better time watching paint dry than look at zoning code regulations. But be that as it may, there's a few geeks out here like me who like this kind of stuff. I know Mike really enjoys those meetings. It's just, I'm sure it's circled on his calendar now for every month coming up this year. But that's how it's being done. We have kept the actual cost to the residents to a minimum. I did mention we have a consulting firm helping us out, but they're not even coming to the meetings. We're corresponding with them via email and phone calls, and their utilization is very targeted and kept to a minimum. And I think our charges to them from over the course of a year and a half have probably been around $10,000, if that. So we're trying to keep that to a real minimum, because some code revisions can be several $100,000 if you just consult this stuff out. Okay, so what specifically is being done? Now, part and parcel with our approach is we're going to go through the whole code, but the supervisor and I think the board had a priority item that they wanted addressed, given all the investment that's being made in a certain area of the town, and that was the Freeman Bridge Road corridor. There's been a lot of stuff happening there, both as a practical matter in terms of changes in use and new businesses coming in and so on. And there's been a lot of public investment recently in terms of grants that have been awarded to the town to help plan improvements to the corridor, both from transportation, multimodal, pedestrian pathways, that kind of thing, and also the overall look at aesthetics of the corridor as well. So those grants have been awarded. One of those projects I think is complete, and the other one's currently underway. But when it's all said and done, it's going to be a real dynamic corridor. And I think you're going to see changes there on the public side, because once we have those types of plans done, you're going to see it now happen on the capital side. The transportation improvement program will hopefully kick in, and we'll see some improvements on the public side of that corridor, meaning the roadway itself. So we're trying to do our part from the land use side. And what we discussed as a committee is, in light of the recommendations in the comp plan, the input that represents from the community, and what we're aware of out there in the real world, what can we introduce into this corridor that's of a commercial nature, because that's really what it wants to be. It's transitioning away from single-family residential. And basically speaking, we as a committee recognize this as one of our three central commercial areas or corridors, if you will. We have Town Center, we have Freeman Bridge Road, and then we have the Route 5 corridor. So we had a lot of discussion about these uses that you see here. And, you know, brick and mortar retail it's not what it used to be. And so what is going to be the commercial future of our commercial areas? People are shopping different now. Not that they give it up on it completely, but a lot of stuff is being done online. So in recognition of that, we tried to recognize uses based on that input, based on that discussion, the input from the public, based on that discussion, what types of uses would be dynamic and create a really interesting corridor and an opportunity for the property owners to get a return on their investment, and also just make for a great place to be in. And so we're trying to put forth a use schedule that will support that. And yet we want to make sure that it's reviewed and consistent with the goals that the community has set forth in the comprehensive plan. So you're not seeing uses here, those of you who know anything about zoning, and I can't imagine there's a lot of people who do, they try to avoid it, you're smart to do that. But uses are listed by, they're as of right, or they're allowed, and you don't need to get any kind of discretionary approval or a permit or something like that, you can just do it. Like in a single-family home or a single-family residential district, single-family housing is allowed as of right. This being a commercial corridor, commercial development and office development and things of that nature, even multifamily housing, you know, that can take on different characteristics. It takes, you know, it needs review. So what we're also suggesting here, and this is in keeping with the way a lot of the commercial uses are in the town right now, we want to see them reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, either under a site plan review procedure, which you're seeing here, or the next slide I think refers to those uses that are requiring a special use permit. Now the difference between the two is, under site plan review, it boils down into layman terms. You know, it's not a question of if it's allowed, it's how it's allowed. So these are things that are allowed, but we just want to review and make sure they're being done in an efficient manner, in a manner that's minimizing any threat or risk to the public health and safety. In other words, safe traffic, safe access in and out of the sites, and at the same time we want to make sure it's an attractive corridor and in keeping with the long-term goals of what's specified in the comprehensive plan. So this review procedure, site plan review, by the town's Planning and Zoning Commission allows that to happen. Now, special use permit, these by their nature are things that, there are certain aspects of these things that, if not conditioned, could lead to adverse impacts. So we want to make sure, like in the case of a marina, where is the gas pumping going to be, or the pump outs for the sanitary sewage from the boats? You know, where is that located? How is that done? Is it in keeping with state law? So we might have a special use permit that says, as a condition of approval, we want to make sure that those components are in place before that use can go forward. So that's the nuance, the difference between site plan review and a special use permit. There are uses by their nature that have certain facets, if you will, or elements that really require conditions in order for it to go forward. So that's what we're looking for there. But the thing I want to end with in looking at these use schedules is, if you look at these both in total, these are very, what we thought to be, wide open, if you will, dynamic types of uses, entertainment-based, restaurant-based, things that will bring vitality and vibrancy and a robust land use pattern to that corridor. So that's what we're trying to reinforce here with that. So that's the what specifically, and then where. So this is a map of the corridor here, and here's the corridor going through right like that there. That's Freeman Bridge Road itself. And you can see, this whole approach to a corridor district represents a departure from what traditionally was in zoning. Zoning traditionally would look at existing land uses, that may cross back and forth through a region, and we district accordingly. And that results in kind of a fragmented pattern, if you will. But what we're suggesting here by virtue of this is we're saying this corridor, this spine, is going to be the unifying factor here. creates the framework around which this district is going to be physically set down. And then within that corridor area, we start looking at the individual parcels, and you see those little white lines there. These represent property boundaries of all these parcels based on tax mapping. We want to see, these parcels, by virtue of their current character, their physical makeup, their current use, lend themselves to that use schedule that we just had a chance to look at. So the idea is then those uses would be allowed in this district boundary. Now, Chris asked or mentioned about this being an outright district before, and I think that's open to some further discussion, whether this is a district, meaning that it comes in and changes the zoning over that area in a conventional manner, or it's what is referred to as an overlay zone. In other words, the current zoning stays in place, and these uses come in and, if you will, think of it, set on top of those and are in addition to that. I think that could be considered either way. I quite frankly think it lends itself to a district, in keeping with what the comp plan is saying and what the rest of the committee, the input I heard, and Mike, I don't know if you would agree with that. But it seems like it wants to be a district. So I think that's the recommendation, that this is a district instead of an overlay. But I just wanted to point out there is that option if you wanted to go off in that manner. So that's where it's located. There's been some interest in having this map. I'm going to, I think, Chris, if you don't already have it, I'll make sure you get an electronic copy of this as a PDF, and we can post it on the town's webpage, and people can look at it in some detail. And I think there was interest from a person in the audience, and we'll send you one. And then the last thing I want to end with is, and this is where we're going to think outside the box a little bit in terms of just, conventional zoning. And this is really something I personally would like to see happen. We also we're working on design guidelines as a committee. And design guidelines will help unify the look of the corridor in terms of building architecture, exterior landscaping, the flow and function of parking lots and their placement. So I think those guidelines would be very useful in terms of further executing the spirit and intent of this zoning change. And they can really make the corridor look a lot better over time. It's not going to happen in an instant, but between the public investment in the roadway itself and design guidelines, I think we can come up with a real dynamic look for this corridor in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then we have the conventional things of the zoning district adoption and the change to the zoning map. That's inherent in the exercise. But then, additionally, what I think would be a tremendously great idea for the property owners there and in executing this district and kind of accelerating its impact is go out and initiate a business recruitment program as a township. Go out, don't wait for the people to come to us. Go out and seek out those businesses, those entities that can help us achieve what we want to achieve for our community. And that way we're being proactive, we're not being reactive, we're going out and seeking the change we want rather than waiting for it to come to us. And then the other last item I have there is a marketing program to help the existing businesses and the new ones that hopefully will be coming in. We have a READY fund, and it's for economic development. I think it would be appropriate, part and parcel with this zoning district change and the map change and the design guidelines and the business recruitment. Let's help market our local businesses in this corridor and really give this fledgling district a chance to be successful. And again, shorten that time frame towards the realization of what we want to happen in that corridor. So those are some ancillary suggestions, but I think they're very appropriate and it really would be something that's new and different from what you see with a conventional zone change. So that's it.
So thank you, Jim. To start off the discussion, if there's any questions or anything from the board, I just want to point out, because I get questions a lot about, well, it's a commercial district, so why go through all this different corridor district or overlay or whatever it ends up being? And I think there's some things that are very unique about Freeman's Ridge where they're different than the commercial corridors that we should at least mention here tonight. One in particular, if you go back to that map,
Yep.
is the location of the district in relation to the river.
Yes.
It's water, it touches waterfront.
Yeah, we have marinas in there now that allow
Very,
use.
very different than many other commercial corridors, but that lends itself to be extremely important to incorporate pedestrian-friendly elements, because not only do you touch the water, you have waterfront, which is critically important, but look at all that density of residential off to the top left there. So you're connecting residential to waterfront through a commercial corridor. And that's why this is such a good time with the Complete Streets concept,
Right.
and all that we're doing pedestrian friendly. And I just want to point out the objectives in the corridor do speak to very much pedestrian friendly bicycle infrastructure, improved safety, better traffic congestion management, all those types of things I think are very important to this.
And that's a good point, because it also does touch on the trail system
Yeah.
that we hope to reactivate, both on the town and village side along the river.
Any questions for Jim? Comments?
Jim, thank you to the committee,
Sure.
and to you, and to the staff that have been participating. I know this has been a very long, arduous process. I know Councilman Gaudowski has mentioned that. It's arduous.
Everyone's calling the outline.
I won't throw you under the bus, but he,
Too late.
and I'd like to thank Councilman Gaudowski for his attendance at the meeting.
No, I'm only kidding. Mike has been very dedicated, and he's been providing a lot of input, so I'm just as, who likes zoning, you know?
Yeah, it's-
You do.
So from here, we're looking at referring this to the planning board. Is that correct, Mike? This will be a code change. So we would refer to, from tonight, refer to the planning board, and then we would have their recommendations back, and a public hearing would have to occur, obviously.
At some point, we would have to have some actual text.
Right. So
We do have text. Yep, we have actual text.
Can I just say, go back to that last screen, I like the idea of a lot of tying it to the business recruitment idea, coordinate with the GLDC, Metroplex, the Chamber, because as you look at the whole county map and the city and the town of Glenville, that corridor is the next step.
It's the link.
It's the link between Saratoga County and the city and all of that. And it only makes sense for all those people that want to be involved in this.
And we have a tremendously good track record as a town in terms of new businesses that come here. New businesses are successful. Lowe's, Applebee's, the recent Aldi's, they are all very successful when they come here. The community embraces those because it was done, Applebee's, part of the thing that led to Applebee's coming here is the Glenville Local Development Corporation sponsored a business survey of the local community, and the residents wanted a family-based restaurant. And that was used as justification to try and I think it helped in establishing that. And it's been a tremendously success. Every time I go in there, it's always very busy. So, I think if we can, build on that success, and like I said, be proactive in our efforts, I think it would be, it would yield fruit.
Jim, I just have one question. Going back to the slide where you talked about the uses that you listed, either by site plan review or conditional,
Yeah, special use permit, yep.
special use. So those are in addition to what the current zoning is, or some of them already are currently zoned?
Well, that's the difference between, you have defined exactly the difference between overlay zoning and a new district. If it's a new district, these would replace what is there,
Okay.
what is allowed in the code today. And I encourage you to just, you can go to our code, and it's quick to find the district uses that are allowed there. But if it's overlay, it would be then on top of and in addition to. I think, given the flavor of this and the recent input from the comprehensive plan and all the information that's come in from the studies that are being undertaken with the Complete Streets grant that we got and the other transportation grant, the waterfront grant, I think it's time to look at a new dynamic.
And I think what illustrates that is when you look at Town Center is all general business. It's one zone, and it fits, and we have an overlay for architectural, basically, structures that are different than other general business zones. The challenge on Freeman's Bridge Road, and I think you all see it if you drive it, is the zoning has been all over the board.
Right,
And
it's
that's
fragmented.
been one of the problems. So this would unify one kind of symbiotic zoning code, which we have language for, as opposed to then just placing more uses on top of so many other uses.
Well, that's the thing, if it's already a conglomeration of
Yes.
uses, then,
Right.
and put that over the top of it, it might
Right.
not achieve what we want, which is a cohesive plan for that area.
The other thing I would suggest doing in your review process, now that this gets in like a formalized queue, if you will, I think it would be appropriate to have a meeting where we reach out directly to the property owners there and ask them to come like in a workshop setting, before it's too much more formalized, because they're the ones who are impacted by this. I mean, this is all done with good intention. If you haven't gotten that impression, it's done with the best of intentions here from the standpoint of the input we've received through the comp plan, through the members of the committee, but it really should be, I think, explained to the property owners, or at least have a chance to explain it to them
I
directly.
agree, and we'll definitely do that, but I don't want the impression that they weren't. They were part of the
Yes.
Clean Streets process.
They were.
Engaged through that.
Actually, several times they've been approached. So, but I think now that we're getting to this finalization, it would be nice to reach out to them again.
So back to the schedule, because I'd like to set kind of commitments and expectations. We will send this to the planning board, we'll get the recommendations, we'll look at a public hearing at some point, probably this summer. We do go to summer schedule in June, which complicates things. We may have to do a special meeting here and there in the summer, I can tell you already. Probably will have to, but I would say by August, we should be able to act on something, is my hope.
Yep. And again, the other thing I must emphasize, this is not set in stone. This is very much a draft. It's subject to further change and revision. So, this is just the first crack at it coming out of the committee. So if we get some input from residents or the business community, it's subject to change.
Thank you, Jim.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
So, tonight, we have another presentation. It's not far off from Freeman's Bridge Road, and actually it's probably complementary to. Did you want to use the computer?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry, Mike. Mike, you can come down here and sit. There's room between Mike and I.
I feel better over here.
So this is the presentation on Dutch Meadows Lane proposed mixed-use plan development district. The board members all have the materials that have been provided to you on the proposal. I won't get into the whole history of the proposal, because I'm sure that's part of the presentation, and so I'll just turn it over to Will Hopwell.
Thank you, Chris.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
There it is.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, board members. Bill Hoblock, Bridgeville Capital. We were here last 1 year ago, last May of 2018. We're here tonight to introduce the revised application for a PDD. A lot's happened in a year, and as Chris mentioned, let's kind of talk about where we started, what we've been doing for a year, because we have been doing a lot, and then introduce the revised PDD. So you have the revised application in front of you, a brief narrative with the attachments, and we'll go through the attachments that show the land, the original application, the original conceptual site plan, and then what it's evolved to today with the revised new proposed. So there's the aerial that we've seen from day one, and that's attachment 1 in the book. That is 30 acres of land on Freeman's Bridge Road on both the north and the south sides. The original plan was for a mixed-use PDD, and I'll run through it real quickly as you guys will remember. So here's the original conceptual site plan. It had 4 components to it, 2 residential and 2 commercial. The first one, which is the largest, was on the south side of Dutch Meadows Lane. It was a residential multifamily apartment community. It had 11 buildings, a clubhouse, and an outdoor swimming pool. Each building has 26 residents, so that was a total of 286 apartments originally proposed. Buildings are 3 stories, interior corridors, elevator service, and internal garages, similar to the existing multifamily senior community across the street, Glenwood. So the second component of the original mixed-use PDD was also residential, and that is across the street on the north side of Dutch Meadows Lane. And that was a 33-unit townhome community, and that was proposed as a for-sale multifamily product as opposed to a for-rent, which is down below, and I just mentioned. The third component of the original MUPD and the first commercial is on the northeast corner of Route 50 and Dutch Meadows Lane to the left. That was proposed as a commercial pad site and ideally for a convenience store. You know, you're on a signalized intersection. So that was the obvious choice we were going to go there. The final component is on the to the right-hand side, on the south side of Dutch Meadows Lane, next to the proposed apartment community, and that was originally proposed as a commercial/retail pad site, just to the east of the multifamily. So that was the original plan, the original MUPD. The original application materials that we submitted, you may recall, had a narrative, and it detailed how the MUPD as proposed complied with the town code, complied with the comprehensive plan. We had aerial site plans, building elevations, part 1 of the full environmental assessment form. We introduced this at the January meeting of last year. At the February meeting, you referred us to the Glenville Environmental Conservation Commission as well as the PZC. In March of last year, we submitted further material to the town, and that material was specific to the PDD provision of the code, and that had a more detailed narrative on how we complied not just with the general provisions of the town code, but specifically the PDD section. That also had further information, a survey, a vicinity map, a stormwater management plan, a floodplain overlay. So, in a pretty short period of time, we submitted what we'll call pretty comprehensive materials to the town. We then, at the same time, we went through 3 meetings with the GECC. In that same time period, further information was requested by the GEC, and that was obviously provided by us. In April, the GEC made the recommendation that the proposed PDD should receive a negative declaration under seeker, since it would not have any significant adverse environmental impacts. That same month, after the GEC, the PZC made the same recommendation that a negative declaration is warranted, and also that this board should approve the PDD as it stood. So that brings us to 1 year ago, which was May, when this board held its public hearing. During the public hearing, we actually reduced the unit count of the multifamily community, the apartments on South, from 286 to 234. The public hearing was sparsely attended, and not much conversation from the public really ensued. So following the public hearing, what we did is we proceeded with the more detailed site planning and analysis to address issues that were raised during the review process that went through by this board, by the PZC, by the GECC. Also at that same time, the land was being explored as a site for a joint municipal center. That was throughout the summer. And at the same time, the federal wetland regulations changed drastically in the fall of last year. And with me, by the way, is Greg Fauché, our counsel from Whiteman, Oshman, Hanna, and Brian Alsterhout of our engineering firm, Environmental Design Partnership. Greg can answer any question or explain that later if you so desire. But what has happened with the wetland regulations, it has just led to an uncertainty in impacting federally regulated wetlands. So in order to keep this development and this planned development district progressing, the best course of action is to completely avoid impacts to all federally regulated wetlands, and that has led to a change, significant change in the PDD, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight. So that's the original plan. Next will be our revised plan. This is exhibit 2 in the book. So Pretty straightforward. The redesign of the PDD involves all proposed development occurring south of Dutch Meadows Lane. We are not proposing any development north of Dutch Meadows Lane. The PDD changes importantly from a mixed-use PDD to a residential planned development district. The entire plan now consists of further density decreases. We'll start with, so you see on the right-hand side,
Bill, you want the laser?
Sure, thanks.
See you work.
Thanks. So basically, it's split in half. On the right-hand side, right there, that is that's the multifamily for rent, the apartments, and then to the west of it are the townhomes, the for sale. So the density of the apartments here, in order to avoid wetlands, drops to 208 total units, so we've gone from 286 to 234 to 208. With also a density decrease in the townhomes from 33 to 30. So, as mentioned, really avoiding, not mentioned as you can see, avoiding the regulated wetlands to the north of Dutch Meadows Lane simply is not possible. So, hence, we've eliminated all of the original proposed development to the north of Dutch Meadows Lane. So that was the townhomes, and that was the commercial convenience store on the northeast corner of Route 50 in Dutch Meadows Lane. We are offering to donate the land to the town of Glenville as a public benefit associated with this proposed PDD, however. So that leaves the south side of Dutch Meadows Lane. As we've discussed in the past, when we were here last year on multiple occasions, that piece of property, we call it awkward. It's long, it's narrow, it's bounded by an active rail line. It is not on a main commercial road, and certainly being here when Jim introduced the overlay of Freeman's Bridge Road is very timely. So if you look at it from a land use perspective, and if Jim's still here, Jim, I love zoning. When you look at it from a land use perspective, multifamily housing, whether it is a for rent apartment or a for sale townhome, really becomes one of the few land uses that really works here. And also to dovetail off of what Jim said is, when we were looking at, okay, we would like to continue to progress a PDD and what components can stay, because we knew we would lose some, and as you can see, we lost 204. And we analyzed what, under a land use perspective, what uses stay, what are essential, and it's the residential. And really, as discussed, the town is putting a yeoman's effort in improving and revitalizing what is now really the main commercial corridor, left redevelopment in town, Freeman's Bridge Road. And one way to do it is to get people there. You get people to live there, you get people to walk there, you get people to like there. That's why, one of the main reasons that we really wanted to preserve the residential component of the original PDD, because the people living there will support the commercial businesses on Freeman's Bridge Road. And also from a land use perspective, I mean, Jim said it, you have your commercial corridor, you transition west from Freeman's Bridge Road through multifamily, which is already there. You have, Glenwick right there, which are rental apartments, and townhomes across the way there, and we're more multifamily with apartments and townhomes. And then you transition into the single-family homes, which are to the west of Route 50. So it's a natural land use transition. So I mentioned the density of where we stand at 208 for apartments and 30 townhomes. So, when you look at it, we have spent a lot of time over the last year coming up with what works best here, given where we stand in this new uncertainty of the wetland regulations, and we strongly believe this is it. We believe this revised PDD continues to promote the goals and objectives of the comp plan, as well as the town code. The revised PDD continues to advance appropriate land uses, again, for this awkward piece of property. And as importantly discussed, the PDD will act as feeders for customers of the businesses on Freeman's Bridge Road and acts as the land use transition piece, as I discussed. So that's where we are. We're going to ask tonight to be, like last year, referred to the GECC and the PZC to get their review and recommendation as we did last year, because it is a significant change. And then we'll come back here. I think just the one thing I'll end on is the original proposal. I would say the criticism, and it certainly didn't receive a lot of criticism, but any criticism it received for the most part was related to the commercial component on the south side of Dutch Meadows Lane. We all talked about the apartments work today, the townhomes work today, that corner of Route 50 worked, as a convenience store. Everyone always questioned, how can you do a commercial component on Dutch Meadows Lane? It's not a commercial corridor, and we always answered with, well, it will work when more residential is built. However, the fear was, hey, we're focusing on revitalizing and redeveloping Freeman's Bridge Road. That's where we want our commercial. We don't want it anywhere else. And frankly, this new revised PDV answers that concern that was voiced by really all the boards that we went to, all three.
Thank you, Bill. Can you just talk a little bit about the difference between the dark green and the light green?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so light green is just generally the non-forested areas. The darker green areas, like you see here, are just a little more woody and things of that nature.
So the entire parcel on the north side from 50 where it kind of like comes down around, all that is donation?
Exactly.
Yes,
All lands on the north side of Dutch Meadows Lane are offered to be donated to the town because, while it's not appropriate for our originally envisioned development, it actually has value for other uses.
So two things I have real quick. One is, as you know, in our discussions, and I think everybody knows by now, I'm pretty passionate about pedestrian elements.
I had no idea.
I think this board would agree with that. I think we've talked about the pathway and the lights on Dutch Meadows.
Yeah, and the original, that aspect of the original application stands because we understand the importance of it. And so, as always, proposed stays in of doing a multi-use pedestrian path along the south side of Dutch Meadows from Route 50 connecting all the way to Freeman's Bridge Road, which is also, it's also beneficial to us because, now we can say to people who live here, get on your bike and ride. Freddie Mercury does.
So we have, if I could just take a moment and introduce a few special guests with us here tonight, because I think some board members might be saying, well, what are we doing with 6 acres of property in the middle of maybe a commercial corridor or area? I think, first of all, green space in a commercial area is great. I think towns can do more of that. We can't develop on every piece of property we have. But one of the things that I've been in discussion, with is Larry Zeglin is here with his group from the VFW, Mayfair VFW. They've got a great project called the Legacy Project. They've been working on trying to find a place for a Veterans Park Memorial. I'm not going to talk about their project because they'll probably come back and do a presentation maybe in the next meeting or so to the board on exactly what you're all planning. But I think there's a great relationship here between the town and this group and trying to maybe use this as a Veterans Memorial Park, the Legacy Project. I think you guys are excited about the idea. I think it's great that the developer's willing to help with this, and I think the town would love to be a partner in it. So that's one of the ideas I want to at least present for the town board so that there is a use for it. I know some people might say when they think about it, well, we're overextended in our parks, we've got, grown in our parks quite a bit, but this is something I think that has a potential phenomenal use in partnership with another not-for-profit, and I think you're here tonight in support of that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you seem to be in support. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that.
Just one question. So would you still consider finishing the sidewalk on the north side?
I forgot about that one. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
I know you're giving us the land, but I'd like to see a commitment to finish
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was part of the original
It's
proposal.
not a big
It's,
stretch.
it's not a heavy lift. The only caveat is I haven't looked at that in connection with the wetlands. This wetland issue is real tricky.
Right.
So that's, if I can,
Well, yeah, if you could look into that.
absolutely,
That would be great.
absolutely. That's the only thing I'd throw out there.
Definitely.
We've talked, it was in the original proposal, that
Yeah.
is, that side is approved.
Yeah, understood.
Anything else? Questions? I don't know if yes, Jim?
Is there a phasing plan?
Phasing plan, yeah. So the apartments will be done in 2 phases. Okay, we have a similar product, or similar community on the other side of the city of Schenectady in the town of Rotterdam called the Residences at Vista Square. Similar building right on Curry Road that we did in 2 phases, 2 equal phases. It's actually 208 units, 104 units, and 104 units, which is how we do this. And the townhouses would start immediately. I mean, there's no phasing there. Those are built and are built as sold. And this also gets us away from when this was a mixed use PDD. You had that trigger. The code was you had to build a commercial before you could build the other phases. That became very tricky here. So we don't have that anymore. So our phasing is much more straightforward here.
Bill, I just have one question or just a comment for further consideration or request for more information on your thoughts. I see you have an ingress and egress on 50 across from Baptist.
Yes.
For the townhomes.
Yep.
That's a pretty, I'm sure you're probably aware, that's a pretty congested area at certain times of the day.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's a ton of accidents there,
Uh-huh.
but a left turn out of there would be
Yeah. And-
dangerous.
Well,
So what are you guys thinking about how to?
our thoughts are that's got to be approved by DOT, and the first comment from Craig Manning, who's our traffic engineers, was that'll most likely be just a one turn.
Right turn only.
Yeah, and you have the second, you're probably going to come in and out of there versus over Duckhouse Lane anyway. It's an easier in and
Oh,
out.
of course, I mean, I
Yeah.
think intuitively people would probably rather make a left turn at the light, but people do crazy stuff.
I
so.
know, but that is, it's expected.
Yeah, so would it only be potentially, depending on what DOT says, a right turn in or right turn out?
Yes, again, it's up to DOT,
Yeah, of course.
whatever DOT says, DOT
Right,
said.
right.
But, our engineers have spent a couple times with DOT, so they know.
Yeah,
So.
good, thank you, I'm glad you considered.
Anyone else have any questions? Veterans, any questions for anybody?
Excuse me. My back's a little sore. I ate 600 links of sausage today. Did a ziti dinner Friday night at the Senior Center. Right? No, I want you to know that we appreciate so much Chris's involvement in our organization for the Legacy Project. We've been at it 2.5 years now trying to find a place to build this amazing facility. It'll be a 10,000 square foot Veterans Cafe and a memorial for all of the conflicts over the last 80, 90 years anyway. And Chris has been with us lockstep all the way, and this is an opportunity for us to do that. We all have the wetlands issue that you brought up. We have that concern as well, okay? If there's a way to mitigate that, any way to do that, we're thrilled, okay? We think the location is excellent. It's very visible. It's very accessible. That's important to us. We're very committed to this. You need to understand that, okay? And we're going to make this happen, and certainly with the help of the town, perhaps that actually will happen, okay? We're very proud to be part of that project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Having veterans in my family, I'm proud to be part of it.
Anything else? Anybody else? Yeah, Tom?
Is that permit about 50, is that going to be municipal, or is that going to be private, or is that going to be town?
That'll be private. Everything is private. We like it that way.
We thought you might like that, Tom.
Is there any HOA?
That'll be an HOA. We manage the apartments, HOA will be the first up.
Anything else? Thank you, Bill. I think it looks like a great project.
Thanks for your time tonight.
Same thing on the schedule. We'll probably look for getting to the public, to the PZC, to the public hearing on it.
Yep.
So,
Great. Yeah. It shouldn't be that long. We were there for quite a while last year.
Yeah.
It's certainly a scaled down project.
How you doing,
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Next presentation we have is our Highway Commissioner on MS4, Tom Capola. See you later, Joe. Thank you. Good evening, board. Anyone who's left?
MS4 report tonight. I'll briefly go over what MS4 is. It's basically the protection of our waterways leading to major rivers, things like that. So when you look outside your house, you see a catch basin, you see a stream, you see something like that, that all goes to a municipal, either waterway for us, which would be our catch basins, things like that, or it goes into a creek, which leads into the river. MS4 is there for protection of these waterways. It protects our aquifer, it protects our communities, it protects our local trout streams. Implemented by EPA and the DEC. It's an unfunded mandate. It's become there's more impact on the small communities over this. We don't see any funding. We had the governor just recently take more money away from us for our paving program, which falls into this kind of. So it's a difficult program to get through. The town of Glenville does a decent job at this. I'm not saying we do a great job because it takes a lot of man hours to do this. You know, on these reports and things that we have to do, we have a decent staff. Me being the MS4 officer and also running public works, it becomes a little cumbersome to get out and do the annual inspections and things. So we've encompassed Delaware Engineering to help us do these inspections and stuff now. We did just receive a letter that we're under an EPA audit, which is a municipal audit that it's randomly picked. We're the last municipality in Glenville to have this done. So this will start the process now of they come in, they look at our work that we've done, and they say good job, or they say you need improvement, one of the two. In a whole, you know, we're mandated to clean our catch basins. We have about 2,000 catch basins in the town that we have to service. We have an industrial park that we have to keep our eye on. The majority of our problems that we do have don't necessarily come from our residential areas. It comes from our commercial corridors, as you spoke about, with Freeman's Bridge and the industrial park on Route 5. So we have to keep up with those new construction sites. We have a lot of new construction, pre-construction. So we have to do post-construction, pre-construction inspections on these sites, which means there's silt fences, there's protection around basins, protection on the water coming off the sites. These are all things that encompass this program. So what we do is we do our inspections. We have our retention areas, which are public and private, that we have to take care of. There's mowing, there's sediment evaluation that needs to be done, things of that nature. So that's what this program encompasses. It's a lot of work, and there's more attention drawn to it now all the time over the contaminants in the water, things like that. We are in the aquifer, so we do have a great resource here in Glenville. That is our public water source for our residents. So we try to stay on top as best we can. It also covers the sweeping of the roads. You know, our lead program is encompassed in that. Ditch cleaning. Anything you could think of how water runoff into it has to do with this program. So we'll be going through that audit on June 5th, I believe it starts, and we'll go through the process as necessary. You know, public education is another aspect of this. We try to educate the public on what to put on the ground, what not to put on the ground. You know, we've had people changing oil over catch basins. We've had people, you know, people just, I don't know if they don't understand or just stubborn to the fact, but we have to mandate these. We have illicit discharges. Some people have septic systems that don't work anymore. So what do? They put a pipe out to a ditch. And we have to go in and we have to fix that. You know, there's fines that go with this. It's a big program. It's very cumbersome to the town. And, you know, with no funding from the state on this, and they just keep on hitting little pieces more, little piece more, little piece more. Now it's grown into its own entity. And I have to say that if it wasn't for Mike Burns, and it wasn't for Lynn and Tammy, we all have to work on this. They do a great job with the report. Our report is online right now. If you want to review it, you go to the town website, you go to services, you can click over, it will give you the MS4 report.
It's not on right now. By the end of the week.
Sorry. By the end of the week, you'll be able to go on there and look at it.
We already got a call for quick complaint, so.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right, so by the end of the week, you'll be able to review this. The town has purchased equipment in the past year to help us do this. We ended up purchasing a vac truck, which we haven't had in probably, I think it's 8 years. And that truck, since we've had it, has been out working. We've been already in the developments, cleaning our stormwater basins. We've been out doing basement replacement work already. So, with the efforts of the town and the money available that we made, we've been able to make improvements to this program, but it is difficult. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions?
No questions.
No questions, no comments. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, there's a little button right next to you, to your right. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were getting ready to use that.
Thought he was going to put me under the
Next item is the supervisor's comments to the board. As we get a lot of presentations tonight. There are fewer and fewer people as we do them.
It's to put an end to the rest of the crowd.
Now I'm going to make it extra long. I had 1 page and I'm going to use 2 pages. Just really quick, because there's been a lot of presentations tonight. The interviews for our new community development director / planner are set for for next week, May 8th. We have 6, 3 are here local and 3 are from 3 different states. There'll be phone interviews, those to begin with. So that's going forward. I anticipate that if those go well, we're still looking at a 30, 60, potentially 90-day period before somebody starts in that position. So Barton and Judas has been working on helping our planning department review. There's a lot of projects going on, as you see, more than just these. So they've been working on helping the planning department with the volume of work going through there. The other thing we've been working on that we have, we're anticipating to take up tonight, but we can't, is the solar project through the county consortium. Some issues with the lease that we need to talk about in executive session tonight, and if those get resolved, then the schedule for that would be next week, which is the 8th. We would have GE come in and present the business case model that they presented to the county that I and Councilman Galuski were at, and just go over the numbers, and then we would potentially be available for the next board meeting there in May to pass a resolution on the lease if everything gets ironed out. So that's the schedule for that. As was noted earlier, I think twice now, Love Your Park, Love Glenville Park is Saturday. Gina is definitely in Anderson. Mike and I, along with Jim, are in Melwick. Right, you said you're going to be in Melwick. And then Indian Meadows has a bunch of projects as well. We are seeing a lot of volunteers, and that's absolutely great. We might expand some of the projects that are being done in the parks, but even if not, there are other areas of the town that have a tremendous amount. I don't know if anyone's noticed, the amount of litter this year seems to be extraordinary. I haven't seen it like this. In fact, the litter growing up Glenwood here on the other side of the library is horrible. The parcel we talked about on Dutch Meadows on the north side, I walked it with the veterans the other day, and the amount of trash in there is terrible. So there's other projects, even though this is focused on Love Your Park, there are other projects that we do get overwhelming amounts of people, and potentially we can get a good turnout. We're getting a lot of calls on it, so that's good. Speaking of trash, our favorite, bulk pickup is underway in Zone 1. There was a snafu. And the people of County Waste had a different map than we have, and they are in Zone 2. They were in Zone 2 yesterday. We got a tremendous amount of calls from neighbors, angry neighbors. And after working out, understanding what Zone 1 is, what Zone 2 is, they're back into Zone 1, but they spent a whole day in Zone 2. And they committed to me that they will be going back to that area, which was the return and some other streets off of Spring Road. They'll be going back next week when they're back in Zone 2 to take up what, sadly there were things out already, so they thought it was, generally people are listening better than I anticipated, so that's good. 100%.
I would suggest we shouldn't get frustrated over it. I think it's going to take a couple of years for that to.
I agree, and that's what I said to the county waste today when I talked to them.
Let's not get disheartened by the fact that there are those who haven't understood it.
Yeah. And I think it'll take county waste a year. I mean, they sent the drivers out, and the drivers just got confused and.
I was confused. I saw the truck at Town of Colony.
Yes.
I was like, where am I?
Intermunicipal
Yeah.
partnership. We opened, Linda and I opened sidewalk bids today with Tammy for Glenridge. We actually got 2 in. Yes, and this is, the first bid we opened was for, now this is less than a mile walkway from here to Woodcrest. $594,000. And I about fell off the chair. And the second bid was for $192,000. So that was good because our grant is for $220. So we are within our grant. This will be no town money, and we'll be able to hopefully start that project fairly quickly. So to the people who've been waiting for 3 years, it's going to happen. So that's good news. Tom alluded to it a little bit earlier that we've now understand, which I don't think many people knew, the state in the state budget removed the extreme weather winter recovery paving money. We've gotten that for the past 5 years. That's money that we use for paving, obviously. We had it in our adopted 2019 budget to include $37,000 from that, because that's what we've gotten in the past. But that is gone, and that represents 10% of our annual state aid for paving, so that's a significant chunk of money out of the paving budget. So now for 2019, what we have available in state aid for paving is $272,000, and we appropriated, if you recall, $50,000 in the budget out of our capital reserves for paving. So now we're $7,000 short, and we'll have to talk with Tom's gone. We'll have to talk about how to either curtail some more or have to look at allocating more out of capital reserve account or something. But that money is gone, probably will never come back again, and that's unfortunate. We have, though, however, on the good news side, received our $225,000 in state grant reimbursement for the archaeological work at Mount Park, so that is very good news for the parks. This project has been going on for several years. I think my entire administration, I think when I came in, it was going on. And so this is finally concluding at least that portion of it. And I want to thank Vicki Hillis and Jamie McFarland for all their hard work on this. I know Jamie did a lot of hard work when he was here, and it's going to allow us to go forward with that project now this year. Our mortgage revenues continue to track below last year's total by about 10%, so that's not good news. We did see a slight improvement in April, and unfortunately we're seeing a lot of homes for sale in Glenville, so maybe spring and summer will bring us up to our 2018 numbers, but we're currently lagging a little bit behind. And we did receive our first quarter sales tax check from Metroplex with a 2.7% increase over 2018. And we hope that continues for 2019, since our 2018 Metroplex revenue ended with virtually no increase from 2017. Our growth in 2018 was about $1,500. So not a lot, but at this point, anything that comes in is good news. So that's kind of the shorter story for you tonight. I didn't keep it too long because you sat through a lot. Any questions or comments? All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so back to item number 11, resolution appointing position of part-time labor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution proposes that the 2019 adopted budget, there was included funding for a new 20-hour per week year-round laborer at a part-time position for the Glenville Parks Department. We did advertise for the position and received numerous applications. There was an interview committee which comprised of the Director of Human Services, Highway Superintendent, and the Deputy Highway Superintendent. They conducted interviews to fill the vacancy. The team recommends that Mark Madigan be appointed to the position. Should this resolution pass, it would then provisionally appoint Mark Madigan, 33 Heritage Parkway, Glenville, New York, to the position of laborer part-time, effective June 3rd, 2019, at a starting rate for such title of $15.40 per hour.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please take a vote.
Councilman Capelani.
Yes.
Councilman Yaragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Zaborski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Capsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 12, authorizing a settlement of Rose Home Center relative to the property at 93 Ridgebridge Road. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
Do I have a
motion.
second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this is a tax certiorari. This has been, both the assessor and the attorney for the town have participated in negotiations, pre-trial conferences, exchange of relevant information, as well as, I believe, appraisals. This would result in a decrease in the assessed values of the Lowe's parcel. For 2017, it would be a decrease of $480,000. For 2018, a decrease of $960,000. This is this is down from we're talking about a $9+ million valuation here. In 2019, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to explain. We talked a little bit briefly about fair market value, applied fair market value. It's tricky stuff, but I would just note that we do budget for the tax certiorari, this tax certiorari settlements, and one of the certainly one of the good things is pursuant to the real property law. The aggrieved party cannot grieve their assessment for 3 years once the settlement goes through. So this will give us some stability with one of our bigger and higher assessed parcels in town. Maybe Mike wants to talk a little bit about the equalization rate.
Yeah, well, the equalization rate is probably not a concept that everybody is familiar with, but basically municipalities are charged with trying to keep the values, their assessed values, equal to the fair market value. And if they do that, then that would be an equalization rate of 100. But when values go up in town, our equalization rate winds up dropping. And so if somebody's property was worth, in this case, let's say $10 million, when our equalization rate drops, that's an indication that the fair market value should have increased, but that's not necessarily true. So in order to keep the applied fair market value constant, that means their assessed value would have to be reduced. Basically, it was the argument that Lowe's presented here, and the assessor and I reviewed this not just with them, but with assessors throughout the region with respect to other Lowe's properties that are the same or similar size, and we found their argument to be valid, so that while there would be some tax refunds for the 2017-18 rolls, and we're establishing it for 19 since we only paid 19. The 19 tax roll is used for the 2020 taxes. That's not in place yet, so it's not going to have a refund impact. But basically, the whole idea with the settlement is to keep the fair market value where it was at about $10 million assessed value has dropped.
Thank you. And then I'll,
Just my thanks to both Mike and to Bill for their work on this.
I still don't buy into this whole thing. I tell you, it's like going into their store, next time I buy my home improvement stuff, they're gonna say, well, this isn't the fair market value, we're gonna reduce the cost here. It just doesn't seem right. They're doing wonderful business there, I can tell you that. But anyway, I understand the concept and I understand the reasoning behind it. Any other questions or comments?
Well, and you should know that. In the past, they did enjoy the benefit of a assessment reduction on their improvements, and they started off paying only 50% of the value of the improvements. So in this case, their $10 million assessment, $3 million was attributed to the land and $7 million to the improvements. So in the beginning of the schedule, they were only paying taxes on a value of $6.5 million. That schedule now is done, so they now will be paying taxes on 100% of both the land and the improvements. So that's the difference.
So their assessment's going down, but they're gonna have to be paying more.
Yeah, actually, the schedule expired a year or so.
Yeah.
So within this 3-year period, so.
Right.
They've been on the complete schedule for 1 or 2 years.
They've been there 12 years.
Right, so it'll be like 2 years.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Bill.
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Zaborski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Capson.
Yes, resolution passes. And Councilman Galuski made a case for a revale to be in the way now.
You can call for that.
I've already signed it to you. Item number 13, resolution approving the zoning map regarding 21 Airport Road. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, as we talked about already at the public hearing, this is the resolution that will make the amendment to 21 Airport Road, which is actually the 6.7 acre portion of a 9.1 acre parcel. This would change the zoning to research development technology from airport zoning. As you can read in the resolution, this is for the purpose of helping to allow the landowner to develop a new building, a 47,000 square foot building for manufacturing office space and uses similar to other in the airport business park, which as we see is beginning to grow. The planning board, as you see, has recommended to the town board that this doesn't have any significant adverse environmental impacts. And we have issued, the planning board has issued a negative declaration on seeker. And as you can read through the further resolve, there's a variety of bullets there, but this is not reasonably, or this is reasonably compatible with the Town of Glenville Comprehensive Plan. It does not dramatically conflict with the town's comprehensive plan really in any way. It's compatible with neighboring land uses and compatible with neighboring character, will not significantly compromise the character of the neighborhood around it. It also fits with the Schenectady County's long-range plan for repurposing and development of the airport property, so I know they support it as well. So that's kind of the summary on the zone change. Any questions or comments?
Just to say that I think this is a great project going forward for the town. Glad to see it's a piece of property that's currently not on the tax rolls that will go back on, as I understand it. So it's a very good.
I could just add, one thing that is in the resolution. It's not always the case when we're looking at zone changes, but here specifically in our comprehensive plan, we envisioned this airport property being sort of repurposed, and we had an initiative to partner with Schenectady County to explore the airport-related commercial and industrial development on the decommissioned airport property. So this was anticipated in the comp plan, so that further supports what we're doing.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Before new business, we'll go to add-on resolution number 1, which is approving the county board minutes for April 17th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second.
I'll second.
Moved in second, any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this would approve the minutes from the April 17th, 2019 town board meeting. I see that your staff prepared them and sent them to us by email. We'll have a chance to review them at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Just as a reminder, before new business, we'll be going to an executive session. We'll go back there, talk about this contract discussion. We don't anticipate any further business, so I don't anticipate or suggest you should stay, but you're welcome to stay. And so before we get to executive session, we'll go to new business, and we'll start on my left with Councilman.
No business.
All right, thank you. Councilman Pittavani.
I have nothing.
Councilman Pittavani.
I would say just mark your calendars. The annual Memorial Day Parade in the Village of Scotia is on Wednesday, May 22nd. Starts about 6:15, goes from Eagle Street to the Western Gateway Bridge.
See, I knew we had new business. That's good. Councilman Aragosa.
No new business.
All right, I have no new business. So with that, we'll move on to the executive session to discuss contract negotiation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Executive session.